an army of bin Laden lookalikes and think-alikes now occupies a full third of Iraq.
Right.
What would you do about it?
Bomb them. I would have bombed them a long time ago.
I'm here in an unusual role. I'm the interrogator, and O'Reilly is the interrogated. We are friends and colleagues at Fox News. I've been there for 14 years. Bill was there at the very beginning. I think it's fair to say that there would be no Fox News in its current successful form without O'Reilly. He is the single most important driving force for that vast audience, which far outpaces our colleagues at CNN and MSNBC. He's also a big best-selling author, aside from being an award-winning journalist himself, Killing Jesus, Killing Kennedy. He kills them off, and people buy the books. Killing Patton is coming up. I forgot one of the homicides. It escapes me. Lincoln, of course, Lincoln. Thank you. There's a person, one of the many millions who have bought the books. Hillary Clinton would envy Bill O'Reilly's book sales. It's weird. We're kind of the yin and yang of Fox News. He is the personification of the institution. I'm kind of the rebel. But O'Reilly and I are very similar creations in a sense. We come from blue-collar, working-class families from Long Island. All of us, Hannity also, and Howard Stern and Alec Baldwin, we all come from about a 5-mile radius on the middle of the island. We grew up there. I think that in many ways that formed a lot of the people that we became. It's a delight to work with him. My career has had more ups and downs than the roller coaster in Coney Island, but I have to say that O'Reilly stuck with me through all the dips as well as the high points. So I honor him as a friend, as a loyal friend, as a colleague, as a best-selling author, as an award-winning journalist, as the person who really lights the fire that gets the political conversation going in this country. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Bill O'Reilly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you very much.
So I'll ask the first barrage of questions, and then we'll Sue, our executive director, tonight will then hand me the cards that some of you have submitted. But I'll start off with the easy stuff. So O'Reilly, why are you so unremittingly hostile to President Obama?
I've given him a fair shake. He's invited me to the White House on more than one occasion. We've had 3 lively interviews. I think I've been respectful to him. But my job is to watch all the powerful people in the country. He's the most powerful. And he is in let's say, a rough patch right now. So I think he's making some major mistakes that are going to affect every American. And it's my job to point him out. But it's not personal. I kind of like him. I think he is, along with Bill Clinton, 2 amazing American success stories, how both of these men could rise up and become the most powerful men in the world based upon their backgrounds, which were deprived, to say the least, both of them, and I admire that. I think he's an honest man. I think he's a good family man. So I have a job to do, and I think I do it honestly. I don't have ideology ingrained in that at all. I'm like an ombudsman for the folks. And when they do bad things, the powerful, I point them out. So that's your baiting question. That's the answer to.
Who are the folks? Who do you represent?
I think that the people who like me and watch me are traditionally minded people mostly. They believe that this is a great but flawed country. They've been brought up in a way that hard work and honesty are the paramount things. They don't like dependence. They don't like big government. They don't like to be told what to do by pinheads. They are the people that you just mentioned on Long Island. You know, the people who work for a living, the people who go and make it on their own or don't make it on their own. But that being said, we do have, and there's a new study just out by Pew, a lot of liberal people, other people who don't want to be classified as anything watching because they like the joust, they like the provocative topics, and they like the way we present. But I think my core audience are working class people with traditional values.
But the working class people that we grew up around, let's be frank about it, they didn't particularly care for black or brown people.
Well, in Levittown, where I was brought up, the blacks were not allowed to buy in. You couldn't, they wouldn't sell you a house. And the blacks lived in Westbury, literally across the railroad tracks, if you know the Long Island Railroad. And it's a big black neighborhood there. And I didn't know any black kids till I was in high school. And that was a bad thing. But I never heard my parents ever disparage a minority, ever, or any of the other parents in the neighborhood. And they all came from Brooklyn and the Bronx and moved out after World War II to Levittown, where they got the very inexpensive mortgage, and it was like a mass of white people moving out there, ethnic whites. And we had all mixed, but we didn't have any minorities. So I didn't pick up any of that anti-black stuff. And then when I started seriously playing sports, baseball, football, a lot of my teammates were black. In fact, I played semi-pro baseball on the Brooklyn Monarchs, which was all black but me. And my name was White Boy. As in, white boy, you better get the ball over the plate. Or white boy, what the F's the matter with you? When I wasn't getting it over the plate, I was a pitcher. I had more laughs on that team. But, you know, it was a segregated situation when I was growing up.
Is President Obama getting a tough time now, white boy, because he's a black man?
No, that's absurd. It's just absurd. He's getting a tough time because the country has not responded to his policies economically and now in foreign policy very well. So he's had 5.5 years. People are getting frustrated with the State of the Union, and that's why he's getting it. You know, look, there are always going to be racist people, all right? There are racist black people, they hate white people. There are racist Hispanic people, they hate everybody, and there are racist white people.
We love everybody.
But to say that a mass of people who elected Barack Obama twice are now disparaging him because of his skin color, I think it borders on the absurd.
I want to talk more about that, but the big question of the last 48 hours has been, is Barack Obama, given the fact that he's done so little in Iraq, kind of compounding all of the other scandals that I can enumerate, is he a failed president?
I don't think you can say that yet, but certainly this is his lowest point now. It's almost inexplicable that he has not anticipated these problems, like the flood of 50,000 children over the border. You mean you didn't know that was going to happen when word got out in Central America that you can stay if you get here? I mean, you didn't know that? You didn't know there was an al-Qaeda army forming in Syria that was using the northern part of Iraq as transit? You didn't know? Where are the contingency plans? You know, now he's scrambling, and there's more meeting after meeting after meeting, and meantime, people are getting their heads cut off, and the largest oil refinery in Iraq has been taken over by these people. So my job is to basically say, hey, listen, a good, strong leadership base anticipates these problems. But every time we turn around, President Obama goes, I read it in the newspaper. I don't know. I don't know. Putin grabs Crimea. He doesn't know. All right? The VA falls apart. He doesn't know. I mean, what's going on? What's going on? I mean, it's his job to know. And tonight on The Factory, and you can watch the rerun at 11, we have the former head of the CIA, Walsey, on under Clinton. And I put it to him. I said, is the CIA screwing up? Is it the CIA who's not giving him the information? And you know what he says? He says, no. He rejects information from our intelligence agencies that doesn't fit into his worldview. That's what Walsey says.
What is his worldview? Do you believe that he has a socialist agenda?
Somewhat. I think social justice is what he's primarily concerned with. And Eric Holder, too, the Attorney General. They're simpatico there. It's social justice. And when you get into that situation where all of your policies are surrounding this social justice thing, that you must raise up the downtrodden in the world, not just in the United States, in the world, that this must be your top priority, then you've got to have a lot of money, which we don't have, all right? And you have to have other people cooperating on the social justice front, which we don't have, all right? So these kids coming up from Honduras and El Salvador and Nicaragua and these places, you have to feel sorry for them. Your heart has to break for them. They're so poor and so desperate that they're willing to walk thousands of miles or drive with these coyotes taking them up, all right, to get a chance to what you and I have. We all understand that. But you can't, as Kirsten Power said on The Factor last night, let every poor person in the world come to the United States. It overwhelms the system. Texas and Arizona are overwhelmed today, now, with this. And as president, you have to basically protect your nation. That's your number one job, not social justice. And that's what Barack Obama doesn't understand.
So you believe that the current flood, this tragic flood of undocumented innocence, is the unintended consequence of Obama's policy, of President
Here's
Obama's
what
policy.
we know. This is, and you know, I'm a fact-based guy, all right? And a lot of people don't understand that. You know, I'm not Rush Limbaugh or Al Franken, where everything has to fit into my worldview, which is what Wolsey was saying about Barack Obama. I'm a fact-based guy. We know that in these Central American countries, in the media, both the social media and on the radio and on television, they're being told, if you get to the United States, you can stay. Because of the DREAM Act, because of other things, you can stay. So that's the word on the streets of Tegucigalpa, of San Salvador. You pay these coyotes, you get there, and you can stay. You have an uncle in Detroit, they'll send you right to Detroit, and they will. That's what's happening, all right? So this mass of humanity is now moving north, and there's nothing to stop them. Where we were told the border was secure, and we did this, and we did that, it's all BS, all right? They're coming across, we had something, you might have seen it last night, they're taking them across on jet skis in the Rio Grande. $100, you get on the back of the jet ski, they get you on the other side, you get up, you walk up the bank, and you're in, all right? And the Border Patrol is going, look, we got 50 guys facing 1,000. What can we do? And this is a dereliction of duty on the part of the President of the United States. And tomorrow I have the governor of Texas on, and I'm going to give it to him. He's a Republican. I'm going to say, what are you doing to stop this? All right? Don't tell him I said that because we want him to come on, all right? But this is a direct result of propaganda, but the propaganda has turned out to be true.
The proud descendant of Irish immigrants from the 19th century, you can't for a moment be suggesting that we are deporting 7- and 8-year-olds to go back to the horror that they left. Bill O'Reilly, would you, if a 7-year-old shows up at one of the shelters here in New York, are you suggesting that that 7-year-old be deported back to Guatemala?
See, it's a loaded question, and Geraldo asks these all the time.
A loaded
question.
What
if I say yes, then I'm the mean guy. But here's the deal. If I were president, they wouldn't have gotten in because the National Guard would be on the border, all right? And the word in Central America would be, you can pay them $500 to take your child up, but they're not going to get in, so who's going to waste $500? No one. So I would have prevented the thing because I would have anticipated what would have happened. It's not hard to do that. But Barack Obama ignored it, like he ignored the VA, like he ignored the Russian intrusions, like he ignored the ISIS army in Syria. The president has this capacity to ignore. It's almost like you go to the doctor and you got this giant welt on your now. Well, how long have you had that? 6 years. And you just showed up today? Well, I had 17 meetings before I got in here, you know? That's the problem with the president.
It reminded me of the Bride of Frankenstein with the hump on his back. This does. So, is Barack Obama, now he's a smart guy, Ivy League educated, you know, a deep thinker. Is he disengaged or is he incompetent?
I think he's overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. Barack Obama had no experience running anything. And you've heard that many, many times on the radio. But it's true. He had no experience. All right? So he gets in, he's president now, with very, very little experience. So what do you do when you're president with very little experience? Well, you hire people who have a lot of experience, right? So you hire people, but did he do that? No, he did not. He hired like-minded people. So Valerie Jarrett, who I like very much as a person, pretty much is the most powerful person in the White House. Who's Valerie Jarrett? She's a Chicago ward boss, all right? Where are the big people with all the international experience? They're not there, all right? So that he comes in, I think he underestimated the difficulty of the job. He underestimated what you need to do to convince Congress, the other party, to cooperate with you, all right? He's not an engaging guy. I mean, I have a good rapport with him because we talk about sports and history, but he's not, you know, going out playing volleyball with you, all right? He's an introspective man. But he badly miscalculated how difficult a job it is to be president of the United States. Let me give you an example. Ronald Reagan, okay, who had a lot of executive experience running the largest state, California, okay, as soon as he got elected, he brought in all of these sharp guys who knew about everything because he knew he didn't know enough. And that's how he ran his administration, because he knew he was the front man, all right? But Barack Obama didn't do that. And that's why we're in the mess we're in.
Would we have been better off if Hillary had defeated him in the run-up to the
It's hard to say, because, and that's a good question. It's an excellent, Geraldo just asked a good question, everyone. Write it down. Because with Hillary, you get Bill. You see? It's a twofer. And Bill knows what's going on. You might not like him, but he knows what's going on. And he understands how the world works. Bill Clinton does. Hillary doesn't understand how the world works, all right? She doesn't. But when you elect Hillary, he's there. Now, whether his attention is diverted, I don't know. But he's there.
Shut up.
And that's what you're gonna, the voters are gonna have to decide next time around, is because Hillary Clinton herself is a weak candidate. She's weak, all right? But then she got him, who has 8 years of a fairly successful presidency. And the voters are going to have to decide, do we give power back to the Clintons or not? A lot of it will have to do with who runs against them.
Who can run against Hillary?
A variety of people can do it.
Name one.
Jeb Bush could do it.
Do you want another Bush?
Do I want another Bush? I don't want any of these guys. It's not my job to want any of them. I have to watch them all. Everybody goes, well, why don't you endorse them? I've never endorsed anybody, and I never tell anybody who I vote for. I said, because as soon as I endorse someone, 3 days later, they're going to be in prison, all right? I'm not going to do that. And I'll put them there if I have to. Let me just tell you one thing, and you should know this about me, and Geraldo doesn't know, because he doesn't really care. He's just here because I paid him a lot of money to come. I'm a Catholic. I go to church every Sunday, okay? Because I can't fall behind in atoning. If I miss one, I'm like, I know I'll go to hell. When that priest pedophilia scandal broke, I was so outraged that I vowed that I would knock down every single one of these guys, all right, that was involved with this. And I went after this cardinal law of Boston with a vengeance. You may remember some of that, all right? And I got him. And that was me driving that train, all right? The Boston Globe did good reporting on it. I'll give them that. But that's a local concern. I was the voice nationally against him. And they had to get him out of the country, and they did. They got him out. Unfortunately, they gave him a cushy job in Rome, but, you know, there's some things beyond my control, all right? But, you know, a lot of Catholics, including the Catholic League here in New York City, attacked me. You know, how can you turn on your own faith? I'm not turning on my own faith. I'm turning on the people who are corrupting my faith, all right? And I'm the same thing with the government. So I'm not, you asked me who could run. Jeb Bush could run. He's got the organization and the money. He did a good job in Florida. And one of your issues, education, he's real good at. Unfortunately, he's not a charismatic guy. And as you said, you want another Bush in the White House. I mean, have we had enough? So he's got strengths and weaknesses. There are a bunch of governors who could run.
Chris Christie?
No, he's done. Christie's done. And it's Christie's own fault, because Christie should have said, listen, I made a mistake. I didn't know much about this, but I should have been paying attention to it. It was horrible, all right? It's on my watch. And I'm sorry, that's what he should have done instead of all of this other business. Because if you're going to be a guy like Christie, confrontational, and then tables are turned, then you have to say, look, you know, this was my chief of staff who did this, and look, it's on me. I would have fired her, yes, but I would have been humble about it, much more humble than he was. And I think Americans who don't know him go, you know what, I think we can do better. That's just my opinion. He could take Hillary on. That's Hillary's worst nightmare is Christie, because Christie will go after her to a certain extent. While some of the other Republicans might be afraid to do that because they saw what happened to Rick Lazio here in New York. You know, if you go after Mrs. Clinton, you're going to be a bully and a woman hater and war on women, a misogynist. You're going to do that. But in order to beat her, you really have to confront what the situation is. That as Secretary of State, what did she do? Nothing. As Senator from New York, what did she do? Very little. All right? She didn't do a lot here. And that's the truth. And if you don't believe me, go upstate and take a look at the economic situation up there. You know, a senator of a state is your voice on a national level, all right? And upstate New York is devastated, absolutely devastated. And, you know, where is the plan to help all these people? It doesn't exist because New York State is so New York City-centric with so many voters located here. But you have to go after Mrs. Clinton on her record in public service. That's where you have to go on.
The fact that New York stays stubbornly Democratic, although we have obviously had Republican governors, despite that, that demographic arrangement that you suggest, does that say to you that there'll never be another Republican president because of demographics in America?
No, I think Republican president is feasible. I don't think you'll ever, I think New York State is gone. I mean, I don't think you'll ever have another Republican governor here unless it's just collapsed because, you know, there are so many new voters in New York, mostly foreign-born, and they're all in the Democratic precincts, that you just can't overcome it. It's just the numbers just aren't there anymore. So New York, kind of like Massachusetts, and even though Massachusetts does occasionally do a fiscally Republican governor, I don't think you'll ever see a Republican.
No more Scott Browns?
No. People don't understand the impact of organized block voting. And that's what's happening in this country.
Is some of the objection to immigration based on that,
yes.
that the immigrants are
yes.
Democrats?
Yes. And there's some truth to that. When you get block voting in, when you're a new immigrant, when my people came over from Ireland, they were Democrats because they didn't have anything. And the Democrats were union-based and trying to get them a foothold. So all of my people were Democrats. And that's what happens. They go to the party that gives the most, and the Democratic Party is the party of entitlement. So they're going to go there.
You mentioned that you go to church every week. We work in a heathen business in many ways, but Pope Francis has made of the Catholic Church a reinvigorated, energetic, compassionate, a church returning to its roots. Aren't his politics and Barack Obama's politics the same?
Close, but much more concentrated in Pope Francis is what they call a liberation theology guy. You know, liberation theology, which is South and Central America, is that the government has to partner up and help the poor above all. And as I said, that's Barack Obama. But there are different roles. The Pope is supposed to be that. He doesn't have to protect anybody, whereas Barack Obama has to protect the whole country. And he's not. And he's not protecting us economically or from the Al-Qaedas. And so their roles are different. So Pope Francis, he can do the liberation theology because Jesus wanted Christians to help the poor as one of the primary things. So that's his job. But Barack Obama has to combine, he should be combining the social justice with the strength of the nation. You build a nation stronger, everyone then should be able to participate in that.
Does Fox News cut him enough slack, though? Do we treat him with the same fairness that we treated his predecessor, George W. Bush?
It depends on the hour. All right?
That's a very good answer.
But that's true. It depends on the hour, all right? So who are you watching at any given time? So if you watch Fox and Friends, you have Ducey, who's an Obama basher. He just bashes Obama. It's like clockwork. But the other two, Kilmeade and Elizabeth, you know, they'd rather whip up a souffle or whatever they do. I don't know. They're not interested. And then from 9 to 11, you have Hemmer and McCallum. They have no social agenda at all. They're not bashing Obama at all. And then at 11, you go to Scott and Jenna Lee. And they have no ideology. So that's a 2-hour block with them. And then you have some kind of thing at noon now, outnumbered or outsmarted, something. I don't know what it is. But those people, I don't know what they're doing. All right, and so then you're into Shepard Smith, who's a liberal. He's a liberal man. It's 3 to 4. At 4 o'clock, you have Cavuto. It's a business show. Now, Cavuto is not a big Obama fan. I think that's pretty clear. But that's not his primary focus. And then 5, the 5 people on at 5, they don't like the president so much. But then you have Beckel there, and he's there to stick up for him. It's not real fair. So I'd say that's an anti-Obama situation. Then you have 6. Now we start to get into the signature shows, all right? So Bret Baier, he's not anti-Obama. Would you say he's anti-Obama, Bret Baier?
Well, it's not me answering the questions today.
His agenda isn't to diminish the president.
He's a pretty solid, he's a very solid newsman.
Okay.
With a touching backstory.
He's not doing that, all right? And then at 7, you have Greta, who's liberal, all right? So she's not doing that. And then at 8, you have me, and I'm tough on everybody. So, and he's the main guy, so I'm tough on him. At 9, you have Megan. Again, not an ideologue. I mean, I think at this point in history, she's not a big fan of his, but she didn't come in with, I hate him. And then you have the Republican show with Hannity at 10, all right? But I'm not saying that with any disparagement. He's a Republican. He's a Reagan Republican.
Are you?
I'm an independent, registered independent.
Isn't it funny that he's the independent and I'm the registered Republican?
No, I'm not. You know, and I did that a long, long time ago because, you know, look, when I wanted to get Dick Cheney, what did Dick Cheney say to me? He wouldn't come on a factor, all right? And there are a whole bunch of guys like that. If you listen to right-wing radio, they don't like me. I mean, they hate me. All right, so I'm happy where I am. I can criticize everybody, and I don't have any agenda to push.
What do you say to those who suggest that Fox News is driving the Republican agenda, that the MSNBC is the wholly owned subsidiary of the Democratic Party, but the GOP is the wholly owned subsidiary of Fox News?
Well, you can only go by the surveys, and this Pew survey is very interesting. We're the most trusted news organization in the country, all right, Fox News. So that has to encompass, you know, independents and liberal people as well. So, I mean, look, if you want to think that Fox News is an arm of the Republican Party, then you're misinformed.
Well, the Republican Party is an arm of Fox News, that's right.
You know, I mean, look, I try to get as many liberal guests on the program as conservative guests. And I just ran down the whole lineup, and I don't see any kind of the fixes-in situation. What happens is the others are so left-wing that because Fox isn't, it just stands out as this glaring, you know, whoa, wait a minute, you're not like NBC or CNN or MSNBC. And that's right, we're not. And that's why we're successful, because people had had enough of that media block on the left, and now we give alternative voices.
Why have the ratings of our rivals so dried up? MSNBC has disappeared.
Yeah, they're all
except for the jail and stuff
trouble
on the weekend.
Number one, I don't think it's fair to them. I don't think Nielsen can calibrate the ratings. This gets a little inside, but people now are watching television on their machines. I bet every one of you have a little machine with you, all right? So you can watch television on your machines. That can't be calibrated in the ratings, which is why under 40 people have disappeared. All right, the only time that doesn't happen is in the morning. People get up, they still turn on the television set, but all the surveys say when you come home from work, they don't turn on the TV anymore, they go to the PCs. So the machines now, look, I still sell as many books as I used to. My concerts are sold out. I mean, our commerce is the way it always has been. But our audience under 40 has dropped, but they're not watching on television, they're watching on the machines that aren't being calibrated. That's hit CNN and MSNBC hard. The other thing is that only 5% of the American people trust MSNBC because they've radicalized themselves. They've radicalized themselves to the extent where even if you're liberal, you go, you know what? I'm getting a headache. I really am. Al Sharpton is giving me a headache. All right? So that's what's happening there. CNN simply doesn't have the talent. Now, they're good at what they do, covering the news, but they don't have any flamboyant, obnoxious people like you and me, all right? Because Rivera is flamboyant, and so am I. But CNN doesn't have any. I mean, Wolf Blitzer, he looks like a U-boat commander, does he not? I always, when he comes on, I expect a periscope to come down and him go like this.
So you're the dragon of the, not the hard right, but the conservative, I think it's fair to say. Why don't you run for office?
Because I don't want to get involved with a system where I have to promise people stuff for money. It's as simple as that. If you want to run for office, you have to make all kinds of promises to people to give you $1 billion to run for president or $10 million to run for the Senate. And I know this sounds, I've said it before, and it sounds ridiculous, but I have more power than everybody except the president, all right? I can get things done like that. And people, all right, it's okay. Well, Jessica's law, all right? We started with no states having mandatories for child rapists. 45 have it now, mainly because I send Jesse Waters out to chase the governors around if they don't sign it. Christie just signed it 2 weeks ago. What we had to do to get him to sign it was threaten him, all right? But I'll threaten you. So we got Jessica's law passed in most of the states. Hawaii's hopeless, Vermont is hopeless. These are hopeless situations. Illinois is hopeless, all right? And that kind of power I could never have in elected office, ever.
Well, in Illinois, all the governors keep going to jail. I mean, that's part of the problem.
With the child molesters, they're in the same cell.
Because to be fair, I left out Ted Cruz and Rand Paul as potential GOP candidates. Don't you think that their ideas, however refreshing they may be to you or me, are too far out for them to be generally accepted by the public?
Look, Rand Paul, I think, is going to run for president. He's got a big problem in the foreign policy area, you know, and now with Al-Qaeda really heating up, that's going to hurt him. But I think his libertarian values might resonate. Ted Cruz, I don't think he can at this point. The shutdown of the government was a big mistake for him, and I don't think he can get a constituency that would defeat Hillary Clinton.
You mentioned the shutdown of the government. Don't you think that Republicans bear some responsibility for the ineffectiveness of the Obama administration, his 5.5 years?
I don't know. You always have party politics that are at each other's throats. The key is to persuade people to come over to your side, as Reagan did with Tip O'Neill. And Obama hasn't even tried. Now, is there great leadership on the Republican side? No. You know, Dennis Miller calls the Speaker of the House Tammy Faye Boehner. All right? Because he's always crying. You know, I mean, we don't have in this country two parties that have equal leadership. All right? You don't have it. You have very flamboyant leadership, Barack Obama and the Clintons on the Democratic side, and you have almost non-existent in the public eye leadership on the Republican side. You don't have anybody. Nobody knows who the Republican committee chairman is, or they don't know. So in order to defeat Mrs. Clinton, you're going to have somebody over there. And Christie could have been the guy, but he just fouled it up.
Why did Eric Cantor lose his job? 2
reasons. Number one, he spent almost $200,000 in his campaign money in steakhouses. Did you know that? $200,000. That was more money than his opponent had, totally. And that tells you that Eric Cantor is a fat cat. The fact, $200,000 of campaign money donated to him by Republicans and all over the country, he spent in steakhouses. Okay. And the second thing is the immigration thing. He couldn't define his vision to the conservative Virginians who were in that district. You know, it's not that he was on the wrong side of it. He couldn't define it. So they thought he was out of touch, and they didn't understand what he was doing. So they went for the guy who was very, very precise in what he wanted.
His Judaism, did that play a role?
No. Why would they elect him in the first place?
Fair point, but where do the Republicans go if the Tea Party faction turn out in disproportionate numbers, and a guy like Cantor, who was generally a pretty middle-of-the-road conservative, gets thrown out, and he's the majority leader, for goodness sake? Doesn't that push the Republican Party to a place philosophically and ideologically where they can't command a majority of the American people?
They have to decide at their convention what kind of a party they want to be. I mean, I think you could reconcile, to some extent, the far right with the moderate wing. You just have to come up with problem-solving ideas that will get the job done. I think somebody could reconcile the two, and that's what will have to be done.
Well, if you were drawing the Republican Party platform, for example, would you include a provision, no abortion under any circumstances?
No.
They have the last time.
That's up to them, but I answered your question.
Would you be in favor of the legalization of gay marriage?
No. I don't think that's a federal issue. I think it should go state by state.
But are you okay with it going state by state?
I'm okay with it going state by state as long as the will of the people is upheld, not pin-headed judges telling you what to do.
It's being fair enough. It's being driven mostly by court cases, not
That's
by
right. Let the people decide what kind of a society they want in their state.
Would you put it in the Republican Party platform?
No, because it's not a federal issue. I don't believe it's a federal issue.
So your advice to the GOP is leave it out?
Yeah, don't deal with it at all.
What about immigration reform? Do you think that the Republican Party can be in favor of immigration reform when it is clear that the most motivated segment of the Republican Party is against it?
Well, you have to address the issue directly to the Hispanic American community and say, listen, we want to be compassionate here, but we got to secure that border, because if we don't, you see what's happening here. We're going to be overrun, and you don't want that, do you? I mean, look at all the Hispanics living in Texas and South Texas and Arizona. They want this chaos, do they? That's how you got to put it. You secure that border first, and then the people that are here, you deal with them humanely and fairly.
Like what? What would you do with the people who are the 11 or 12 million here?
They'd register within 6 months with the federal government. Anybody who didn't would be charged with a felony. So then you know who's here and what they're doing, right? You register. You go to the post office, and here's my name, here's where I live, and you fill out a questionnaire, and you file it with Homeland Security, all right? And it goes into a big computer database. That's number one, all right? And if you don't, and you're caught doing anything, and you're not in there, felony. Not deported, you go to jail, okay? So, federal government now knows how many illegal aliens are here, where they live, and what they're doing. And that's number one. Number two, you apply for legal working status. You apply, all right? Again, you get down to the post office, and you apply. In conjunction with the registration, sure. Or if you want to do it a little bit later, whatever you want, you apply. And so they match, all right? Here's a guy, he's been here 12 years, and he paid his taxes, and he's an accountant. Here's your working papers, all right? With the working papers, you can get a driver's license. You're out of the shadows. You're out of the shadows. And then there's a certain amount of time. You have to pay a fine because you were here illegally. You have to pay, a certain amount of money. Not a little fine, but not breaking you, just a little bit back to your country. Then you have to learn English if you don't know it. You pass an English test, and it's an incremental thing. And then maybe after 10 years, you get citizenship. That's how you do it.
But that platform, however reasonable it sounds to me, would never stand a chance with the modern-day GOP.
That's not what the polls say. That is not what the polls say. Polls among Republican voters say that they are willing, if the border is secure, to consider those things.
And yet, in the last Republican Party platform, it had a much harder line.
And what happened to them?
That's my point.
They lost. So the Republicans are going to have to figure out the numbers. You got to persuade Hispanic Americans to vote for you at 40%. You need 40% number there. And so you have to be fair. And look, no law is perfect and no compromise is perfect, correct? All right? But you want to regain power, you have to deal with reality, and that's reality.
An army of bin Laden look-alikes and think-alikes now occupies a full third of Iraq.
Right.
What would you do about it?
Bomb them. I would have bombed them a long time ago. And again, when you watch the rerun of The Factor at 11 tonight, I tell you, like, I don't give a whit what the Iraqi government thinks. Maliki and all these corrupt midgets, I don't care about them, all right? This is between Al-Qaeda and us, all right? It just happens to be played out in Syria and Iraq, because these people will cut your head off in a heartbeat. And Geraldo, they not only cut his head off, but they cut his feet and arms and everything else off, all right? They go the extra mile for him. So, we know there's an army of these people, and they are now transporting captured weapons made by us back into Syria. Why aren't they bombed in the desert when those trucks are going there? The AP can take pictures of the trucks. We can't bomb those people? The reason we can't bomb them is because the president's on the golf course, all right? That's why. It's insane. It's insane. Obama will order a drone to blow up guys in Pakistan eating supper in a little mud hut, all right? But he won't send our bombers to get an army coming down in a flat desert from Syria? Does that make any sense to anybody? All right? So we send a message to the world. These people killed 3,000 of us on 9/11. They now have an army. And when we catch that army out in the open, we're going to kill them all. That's what's going to happen.
I totally approve of that. The president was here in New York. He did 3 big fundraisers the other night. Is it that he doesn't get the urgency of what's going on in Iraq? Is it that he doesn't care? Is it that he is just by nature a compromiser who cannot make a decisive decision?
Well, it's a speculative answer I'm going to have to give, because that's the question I've been asking for months. Why doesn't he understand the urgency of the situation? But I'll go back to Ambassador Walsley tonight, the former head of the CIA. He's firmly convinced that if you bring Barack Obama news that upsets him, that doesn't fit into his narrative, he dismisses it, all right, until it gets to critical mass. He doesn't want to engage on things that are unpleasant. That's the only possibility that I can see here. Because surely he understands the danger of an Al-Qaeda army occupying thousands of square miles in Syria and Iraq. A 5-year-old would understand that, yet still hasn't taken a smidgen, all right, of action against it to stop it.
Would you, President O'Reilly, either overtly or covertly encourage Iran to hit the Al-Qaeda army on the right flank?
No, I'd stay out of that, because the unintended consequences of dealing with that country at this point are impossible to calculate. Look, the Shia, which is Iran and Maliki and southern Iraq, they're going to fight for their holy places, all right? We don't need to be involved with that, all right? We need to kill Al-Qaeda. If the Shia and the Sunni have a beef, I don't think we get in the middle of that at all. So we monitor what's happening there, but we independently take care of these Al-Qaeda. And Iraq has got to solve its own problems. I think we learned a hard, terrible lesson. We can't nation build anymore with these people.
In that regard, the Vice President, former Vice President Dick Cheney, and Liz, his daughter, the former candidate for high office in Wyoming, wrote a scathing op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in which they excoriated President Obama for his lack of action and for losing, quote unquote, losing the war in Iraq. Wouldn't you agree that Vice President Cheney and others in the Bush administration were instrumental in creating the problem by breaking the Iraq of Saddam Hussein in the first place?
No, I wouldn't agree with it, because when we left there was stability in the country. The mistake was not leaving the 10,000-man residual force that could have prevented all this. That was the mistake. Now, the president says he couldn't, and I have some sympathy for this, because they wouldn't sign the treaty where our soldiers weren't prosecuted by local Sunni nuts. And you can't put our forces in danger. But Colonel Peters, who's an honest man and a smart man, says Barack Obama didn't even try to get that done. And it seems to me that if Barack Obama said to Maliki, you know, we're going to deposit $10 million in a little account for you in Zurich, I think he might have got that treaty. And that's how you have to play the game. That's how you have to do it, all right? So I think if President O'Reilly were sitting there, I would have got the treaty. I think I would have gotten it, all right? And then you would have had the 10,000 sitting there in Iraq, and this would not have happened. So I'm not going to buy into the left-wing thing that it's all Bush-Cheney's fault that the al-Qaeda army is coming down. I don't think that's true.
Should we have gotten rid of Gaddafi, Mubarak in Libya, Mubarak in Egypt, attempted to get rid of Assad in Syria?
I think comes a point where you have to say the human rights violators have to pay a price. Now, I think Obama handled Libya pretty well, except for Benghazi. That was a fiasco. But that was more Hillary Clinton than him. But, you know, he didn't go in and he let Europe handle Gaddafi. But there comes a point where, you know, how many beheadings are you going to have to watch? Mubarak was a friend to the USA. The dynamic inside the country was that the guy was too much of an oppressor. Again, I don't know what we should have really done there. I'd have to defer to the Egyptian experts. Certainly, what took Mubarak's place was worse than Mubarak. And Libya now is a fiefdom. It's just, you know, one warlord after another. So again, the unintended consequences of dealing with all of these people, the United States should just minimalist this. Our main attempt in the Middle East should be, number one, to make sure Israel isn't blown off the face of the earth. And number two, to kill as many al-Qaeda as we can kill. That's it.
Should Israel make peace with the Palestinians? Should there be two states in the Middle East?
You know, look, I don't want to tell Israel what to do. I've been there 3 times. There's a lot of pressure on the Palestinians not to cooperate with the Jewish state. I mean, you know that. I mean, they wouldn't even recognize that it exists. So if I'm an Israeli, I'm a little queasy about giving up too much. You know, you let them in the tent, what happens? So I'm going to defer to that because I don't think we're dealing with reasonable people here. And when you're not dealing with reasonable people, you got to be very, very cautious.
Were we too cautious in the apprehension of Abu Khatallah, the alleged butcher of Benghazi? I
mean, the New York Times could have apprehended him. Did a big piece on him a year ago. They just slap him in cuffs, you know, bring him back, and Jill Abramson would have, what's her name? She would have slapped him around. That's what should have happened. You know, look, they got him. I'm happy, but James Rosen gave it, you know, the State Department spokesman a hard time going, hey, you know, what took you so long? Everybody else knew where he was, and it took you guys almost 2 years to grab him, and there was no answer. There's never any answer. You know, and
should Khatallah have been sent to Guantanamo, or do you approve of the fact that he's on the USS New York, on a slow cruise to New York Federal or to Washington?
Look, I want the federal authorities to interrogate him without Miranda rights, so I don't care where you put him. But I think that is the best for America, to first interrogate these guys without Miranda, because they're not criminals, they're not committing crimes here. They're enemy combatants. They're trying to kill civilians and people, you know, overseas. So let's let our intel people get as much out of them as they can. And then, you know, I would hand them over to the military. I understand 2 sides of the story. I just think it's easier. But you know what's inexplicable? Why haven't they tried these other guys? You know, why don't you just try them and just hang them after you? I don't believe in capital punishment, but throw them away. I don't know why.
You don't believe in capital punishment?
No.
What if it's a mass murderer?
I don't. I'd send them to hard labor on federal property in Alaska. I'd have the big gulag up there, and they'd be chopping rocks the rest of their lives. I think that's a worse punishment than just gassing them.
And just quickly on Guantanamo, you think the establishment of Guantanamo is a good idea or a bad idea?
You know, I've been there twice. I don't have any problem with Guantanamo. I really don't. The problem I have is, why don't you just try these people? Why are you if you're just going to sit them there, then the people who think that you're are being oppressive, you bolster their argument. Get them there, try them in a military tribunal, sentence them to Leavenworth or wherever you want, and let's get on with it.
I let it, why not try them in federal court?
Because it becomes a dog and pony show. You know how these trials are. It lasts for years. It costs millions of dollars. Why do we need to do this?
From the audience, how would you handle Putin?
You know, Putin, number one, I would never talk to Putin unless he put his shirt on. Right? Not talking to him topless. I'm not doing that.
I walk around Fox with my shirt off.
You know why Putin invaded Crimea? This is when this guy, because when Putin was topless with the Siberian tiger, and then they had the other picture from the AP where Obama was riding the bicycle with the helmet and short pants. That was it for Crimea right there. That was the end of that. All right. Look, Putin's a little tyrant. All right, he's a killer, a former KGB guy. I think you have to deal with him on a level that he understands. If you do A, B happens. Let me give you an example. As soon as Putin invaded Crimea, I wouldn't have given him Crimea if I were president. I would have said, you know what's going to happen, Vlad? American Express, MasterCard, and Visa are no longer going to accept any charges in Russia. Okay? That's it. Now, as president, you have a little talk with the CEOs of those companies, and you say, you got to do me a solid here on this, all right? There's not a lot of business going on anyway in the big picture. And they would have, all right? So therefore, Russia does no credit card, no major credit card accepted. That kills their tourism industry, it kills their business industry, and everybody in Russia suffers immediately. And I always said, but as soon as you come out of Crimea, then we're going to have a big party, and MasterCard and American Express are going to pay for it. All right? That's what I would do. Here's what happened, Vlad. You do A, I do B. You do C, I do D. All right? That's all. Very calm, but very precise. He understands that.
You're one of the highest paid men in cable. I'm jumping ahead of the line here. You have written 4 mega bestsellers. You got another one, Killing Patton, coming out. Are you working for fame or money?
I just work for fun. I do. I found something I like to do, and I never work for money. I was in a show called Inside Edition and was competing against Geraldo show.
And my brother worked with him for 11 years.
And I did that for 6 years. And it was an okay show. I mean, we did investigations, but we had to do the Madonna, Michael Jackson stuff too. But I got tired of it, so I called my agent Swifty, and I said, you know what? I'm going back to school. He goes, yeah, sure, you know, ha, 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 ha. I said, no, I got accepted up at the Kennedy School at Harvard, and I'm going to leave Inside Edition and go up there. And he goes, you're leaving? And then he put the number that I was making. You're leaving that? And I said, yeah. And how much? $60,000 to go up there. He says, so let me get this straight. You're leaving this number, and you're going to pay $60,000, and you're going to have a job when you get out. I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. All right? I don't work for money. So I wanted to go up there. I wanted to get the degree in public administration, the master's. I did. And I came back, and I got lucky with this. But I think if you do what you like in life, if you do what you're good at, you'll prosper, if you're honest.
Is America, Mike Anyway, Mike asks, is America in decline? And if it is, what can be done to reverse the process? I'm worried for our future.
Okay. Yes, America is in decline, no question about it.
Well, on what do you base that?
Based on the dependency of the population on the government. Okay? So when you have...
Like the number of people on disability, for example.
On all kinds of government largesse. When you have 50% of the households in the country receiving some kind of government entitlement, and I'm not counting Social Security or Medicare, which we paid into, but some kind of thing, all right, coming into you, then you're creating a culture of dependency rather than a culture of self-reliance. America became the strongest nation in history anywhere because of self-reliance, because the folks built the country. If you're just sitting back and letting the government drag you through life, that weakens the nation. And if you know your history, everybody who has done that, every country, including Rome, who has gone that way, has fallen. So yes, we are in decline, but I think good leadership could get us back on track.
For example, what would good leadership do? Give me one example.
Be honest with the folks. Tell the folks, look, if you're on the dole, that's a bad thing. And if you want money from the government, we're going to drug test you. Because we're not going to pay for your methamphetamine habit. You know? We're not going to do it. So you build a structure, to discourage the entitlements. See, what President Obama believes, and I know this to be true, is that we're not a fair country, okay? Is that we don't have equal opportunity to pursue happiness. And that because of that, you have to give money in the form of Obamacare, whatever it may be, to those people who don't have the same opportunity as Geraldo and O'Reilly. So my retort to that is, wait a minute, okay? Yeah, I had 2 parents in the home, and yeah, I went to Catholic school because my father sacrificed to send me there. Yes, I had more of an advantage over the kid in Harlem with no dad, who was into a terrible public school. That's true, all right? So what you need to do is get out of my way, number one, get out of my way so I can make it on my own, and help the kid in Harlem to the extent that you provide him with the tools necessary to compete, not give him stuff, all right? That's the message that you have to send. Because I believe that all men are created equal. I do believe that. That I don't see any deficit between the black race and the white race and the Indian race or whatever it may be. I think everybody has talents, and that's why I believe in God. Because everybody's born with talent, everybody. If there were no God, you would have people literally walking into the wall, not being able to do anything. That would be the luck of the draw. But every human being, even people born with severe disabilities, has talent, innate talent. And this country gives people the opportunity to develop it. But you do need safety nets, the people who do draw the bad card upon birth.
Going back to that 18-year-old kid in Harlem, if his family was on food stamps, would you demand that all of them be drug tested?
Anybody getting food stamps would be drug tested, yes. And here's why. Because you cannot create we're creating an underclass in this country. That's why I objected to all of these children coming into this country, because how are they going to compete? They don't speak the language, all right? They maybe have an uncle someplace in North Dakota they don't even know, all right? So they're going to show up, and how are they going to possibly compete? So you're creating an underclass, not fair to the kid. Is the kid better off here than he is in Guatemala? Yes, yes, all right? But we can't be creating millions and millions of people in this underclass, which is what Barack Obama is doing. So you've got to give everybody a chance through quality education. That's the best way, all right? And that means you have to bust down the teachers' unions, which is a big Democratic stalwart. So Obama knows that. He knows that education's the key, but he doesn't go up against the unions. That, to me, all right? So it's a complicated process, but you've got to protect the nation.
This hasn't been asked, but because you mentioned the teachers' union, would you, in its current form, abolish in public education unions for teachers?
No, I don't think that's constitutional. I think teachers need protections against people who would unfairly hurt them.
How about tenure?
I think it has to be earned, and it has to be much harder to get it than just showing up. I used to teach high school, and in my high school we had good teachers and we had terrible teachers. And if the terrible teacher hung around, he or she would get tenure, and I didn't think that was right.
Is the standoff, an audience member asks, in Washington fixable? If so, how?
You can fix it. I mean, but you have to have, again, you have to have a leader who is going to be able to communicate to the mass of American people who I think are good, fair people. I think maybe 20% of us are so screwed up we don't know what we're doing, but the other 80 can be persuaded to do the right thing. That's my calibration on that.
You mentioned that everybody here has a machine of some sort when they watch TV. Do you think that social media is wrecking the country?
Horrible. Killing the kids. Killing the kids. Let me give you an example. When you and I were growing up, we didn't have any machines, right? So what were we doing? We were out in the street playing, right? Making up creative games, interacting with our peers, learning how to do that, learning how to put together games, compromise, how to deal with certain personalities. It doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen. Okay, now it's all play dates and organized sports and this and that. But when we were growing up, there's always pain in childhood. Now the pain is instant. Say you're a kid and you're 14 and there's a big party in your neighborhood. Well, you know instantly that you're not invited. Instantly. All right, on that machine. Because all these kids are chattering all day long on the machine. So you are brokenhearted and everybody knows that you're a pariah. The pressure on these children because of the machines is immense. It's why you're seeing so much dysfunction among the children. all right? They can't handle the machines. They're not emotionally ready for them. They can access the worst stuff in the world by a click, and the parents can't control it because they can get these machines in the schoolyards. They can do whatever they want to do. They outsmart the parents. I mean, it's horrible, horrible, and it's going to really, really damage the world, not just this nation.
What about guns, the Second Amendment? Don't you think the Second Amendment is stupid in some ways?
No. I think the Second Amendment was brilliantly crafted because people need to defend themselves. If you think you can count on the authorities to defend you, you're crazy. You can't. They are reactive, all right? So the sane gun policy is that you are allowed to have weaponry to protect yourself. Not allowed to take the bazooka out on the street. That's a public safety issue. But again, like gay marriage, each state should then decide what kind of gun laws they want. Because if you live in Montana, a bear might eat you, all right? If you live in the city, chances are the bear will be eaten before he gets to you, all right? So you need a big gun in Montana in case the bear decides to come in. But here, you don't need such a big gun. You need a little gun, but not a big gun, all right? But here's the rub. Chicago has the toughest municipal gun laws in the country. And what happens in Chicago? Well, people are dying, hundreds, gunned down in the streets. Why? Because they don't enforce the gun laws. Here's the solution to the gun problem. Anyone caught with a gun in the commission of a crime is charged with a federal crime with a mandatory 15 years in the penitentiary. That means if Raul or Sean or anybody walks into the 7-Eleven with a gun and takes the money and is caught, in addition to the 7-Eleven beef, you get 15 hard time in the federal penitentiary. If you are caught with an illegal weapon on the street by the stop and frisk guys, oh, wait a minute, that's not allowed anymore, okay? All right, 15 years, that's what you get, 15. You would be surprised how quickly gun crime would drop in this country, all right? And the NRA, they can't say a damn word about it, can they? No, because you're getting the criminal class and punishing them, whereas the law-abiding class still has the weaponry to protect themselves. This is brain surgery here. That's how you solve this. And then Geraldo will ask, well, what about these crazy kids who get the guns from their dad and go into the school and kill everybody? You are never going to stop that, all right? Ask Norway, where all guns are banned. Some clown got a hold of them and killed 74 people a couple of years ago. It's always going to happen. But I agree that this gun thing is out of control in this country, but you could get it under control with those kind of laws.
You mentioned penitentiary and long sentences. I would say the majority of people in jail now are in jail for drugs. I was going to ask you about incarceration, but it occurred to me that you're probably the only grown-up I know who's never tried marijuana. How come?
Because I'm uninhibited enough. I don't need to be stoned, whacked out, drunk, because I would be in the penitentiary if that happened, all right? So I know who I am, and I was an athlete growing up, played 4 sports. I never, really needed alcohol as a social lubricant. Drugs, when I saw the drugs come into Marist College, and that's where I was when I came in, the kids that were using the drugs were idiots. And they were. And they were like doing these things, and I'm going, that's not for me. So I made a decision early on not to do it.
Does that make you more or less able to comment on whether marijuana should be legalized as it has been in Colorado and Washington State?
It's a disaster to legalize marijuana for the children, because they now believe it's socially acceptable. And now you're seeing all of the unintended consequences in Colorado, and you'll see them in Washington State soon. Children now are smoking marijuana at record rates because they think it's good, it's cool. Once a child starts to get into that drug world, they lose their childhood immediately, their innocence is gone, and the odds are they will go to other drugs because that's the culture, that's the group. Oh, that high was good, so try this high, gateway drug. I know this because I have interviewed a lot of people who work in the drug world. and who try to rehabilitate people. And it's so hard to rehabilitate them, and they all start on marijuana. It's not like they start on cocaine, all right? So why do you want to make this socially acceptable? Why do you want to do that? Now, do you put marijuana smokers in jail? No, that's ridiculous. I decriminalize it. If you want to smoke in your basement, go ahead, all right? I don't care about that. But the big myth is that we're putting, you know, people who smoke marijuana in jail for 50 years. Listen, you know the New York State criminal justice system. You have to almost beg to go to jail in this state. You have to be so bad. You know, they give you chance after chance after chance after chance, all right? These people that are up there doing 30, these are the weight dealers. These are the guys that are selling the heroin to the kids, all right? And they deserve the 30 for doing that, all right? They get more if I were in charge.
How come marijuana, almost alone among major issues, doesn't have the same right-left conservative-liberal split?
That's another good question. Geraldo's got two tonight. Because people who do it want to do it, and they don't want to be told they can't. The biggest myth is, well, marijuana and alcohol are the same. My parents, I never saw them drunk, ever. But my father would come home and he'd have a beer, Peels. Remember Peels? Drink Peels, all right? And my mother would drink Chianti wine, all right? So they have their meal, and my dad would have the beer, and my mother would have the little glass of wine. They didn't get tipsy, they didn't get high, they didn't get any of that. They just drank in moderation, and it was as far as I could see, no effect on how they behaved or how they went about their business. With marijuana, the intent is to get high, to become inebriated. That is the intent. Now, morally, again, you want to do it? Fine, you go do it. Just don't hurt anybody. All right, I'm not coming at it from that, but I'm coming at it from protecting the children, all right? And children, if this is deemed socially acceptable, will go for it, and a lot of them will get hurt. So I don't think we need to legalize this substance.
You mentioned stop and frisk earlier. Do you fear that the administration of Bill de Blasio will take New York back to the bad old days?
It's already happening. Shootings are already up. So, you know, if you're, I would have never called it stop and frisk. That was the big mistake. I would have called it meet and greet. All right? Hey, how you doing? How are you today? You see those Yanks yesterday? That was great. Hey, could I just see if you're carrying a gun? That's all. Meet and greet. Stop and frisk. You didn't sell it. They didn't, you know. Look, my contention, and I could be wrong, is that people living in the poor neighborhoods don't want guys out there with the guns because 3-year-olds get killed in the crossfires, right? They don't want it. But they also don't want the police to come in like the Gestapo and start throwing people up against the wall. They don't want that either. So if you had done it in a community way, all right, and sold it that way, I think we'd be a much safer city. But now you can't do it at all, and what's happening is the shootings are going to come up, and this summer you're going to see a bad summer in those poor neighborhoods. You are. And de Blasio will be there going, you know, that's what he's going to be doing.
He also wants to ban the horse carriages in the park.
Give the Irish guys a break, you know, I mean, come on. Look, if there is a problem with the horse people and with the horses, the city should be more vigilant in making sure that the horses are treated humanely. There's not that many horses. It's not like we're at the Little Bighorn here. There's a few in Central Park. Just make sure they're well cared for, all right? That's how I like that.
Another platform in the de Blasio scheme of things is minimum wage. They want to raise it from the current, it's at $7.25 nationally. It's $1 more than that citywide. They want to raise it to $15. The president has said $10.10. What does Bill O'Reilly feel about the minimum wage?
I think $10 is a good minimum wage.
So the president is right on that.
Yeah, he's right on it because it gets people away from the dole. I mean, that's my primary thing. But I would have exceptions for teenagers, you know, people working part-time, younger people, so that the fast food outfits and all that wouldn't have to raise their prices dramatically. But look, for every social engineering thing de Blasio wants to do, guarantee everybody $80,000 in a nice apartment, somebody's going to have to pay for it, all right? Somebody's going to have to pay for it. So, I mean, it's not like McDonald's is going to go, yeah, we'll pay everybody $17 an hour and keep our prices the same. They're not. They're going to raise their prices. And who eats at McDonald's? Working class people. So there's always a cause and an effect. But I think $10 an hour minimum wage is reasonable.
This is a fairly well-to-do audience. Do we pay too much in taxes or just about the right amount?
I think we pay too much in taxes because the government wastes so much of it. You know, if the government were efficient and putting my money that I pay them to good use, I'd pay it fine. But I have to drive the Long Island Expressway. Have you ever driven the Long Island Expressway? Okay. Can they not put a few traffic officers on that road once in a while? All right. The whole infrastructure in New York State is falling apart. Have you noticed? All right. So they're charging you what? $10 to get into the city now? It's $10 admission fee? You know how many cars come in here? Almost 1 million a day. That's $10 million a day the city gets from people just driving into it. And everything's falling apart? Can you explain that to me? Can you explain why it takes 3 years to fix something on the 59th Street Bridge? And whenever I drive by, there's a guy going like this? Can you explain why I'm driving by at 3:30 and there's nobody there? They start at 10, they're off at 3:30, and they got 4 breaks in between. That's why it takes 3 years. That's all government money, all right? So I think that a flat tax on everybody, all right, corporations and everybody, is the way to go. Flat tax, all right? That's all.
Do you have a number?
I would be willing to pay to the feds 33 and to the state 10. I think that's fair.
So 50%.
Of mine, because I make an obscene amount of money, not regular folks. It goes down. I think you should have a progressive rate. I make a lot of money.
You just said flat tax, which is it?
But it's flat in the same rate, okay? So that if you make over $1 million, there's a different rate. But it's a flat rate. You can't write off your luxury box at Yankee Stadium or your private jet. It's this rate, all right? Look, if you're making $1 million in America, you owe America, okay? So you pay a little bit more. But the working class people should have maybe 20, 22, all right? And that's it. But none of this 50-page tax, that's ridiculous.
So you have a situation, well, let me go back to in terms of, before I ask this question, in terms of, well, I'll ask, do we divide the nation? In other words, we have ideas that we hold in common. You want a minimum wage increase, as I do. I want it pegged to inflation once they get the $10 raise. So there are areas where there can be compromise between right and left. But do you think that because MSNBC has staked out the territory on the left, and this is the question the audience member asks, and Fox, we have staked out more or less the position on the right, that we exacerbate the inability to compromise, that we exacerbate the division in the country?
Maybe. I mean, but you really have to be impressionable to listen to what anybody on MSNBC says. So, I mean, like that. But yeah, you can stoke it up. You can stoke up emotion, sure. Demagogues do that. But I think, as I said, I think 80% of Americans can be persuaded to do the fair and right thing. My thing is the minimum wage encourages people to work, all right, to get off the dole. I know it's a burden on small business, all right, but I'm a businessman. I run, you know, a fairly significant empire, and I pay my people really well. I pay them very well because I want to keep them, and I want them to be content. And I think that if you're a business person, you can live with that. But I don't, you know, Seattle, and, you know, $18 an hour and this and that, then you're getting into all kinds of social justice stuff. And, you know, capitalism is our system, and we should embrace it.
Do you think the Republicans have done any better at cutting down the swelling of the civil service and the fact that so many public employees now are getting salaries in the 6 figures?
Well, it's the bloated government syndrome. And I think the smaller the government, the better. I don't think we all need all these people. And, you know, I think let the states handle what they know better.
I'm a fan, but why do you always interrupt people on the factor when they are on point and pithy? What's your motive then?
Well, if I do that, then I'm not doing my job. I contend that I interrupt the people who are either filibustering, don't answer the question I asked, or wandering around into the area of boredom, all right? what people don't understand is that we have a certain amount of time for each segment, all right? So 6 minutes, 7 minutes. When that time is up, the computer takes us off the air, all right? It's not like I can extend the segment. The computer whacks in. So if somebody's going, get to it, all right? And if they're idiots or they say something that's not true, which happens a lot, I can't allow the falsehood to go unchallenged, so I must interrupt, I must go in. But I'm cognizant of the fact that I don't want to be drowning people out, but robust debate is what we do. That's what we do on The Factor, and that's why the show's successful. And in robust debate, you're going to have some crossover, but I try to keep it to a minimum. I know it might not seem that way sometimes, but I do.
What you also do is write, and I mentioned this at the top of the program, amazing best-selling books. I mean, terrific reads, generally well-reviewed. This whole notion of killing people off, where'd you get that?
Well, I had 9 #1 bestsellers writing about contemporary issues, and then I did Bold Fresh Piece of Humanity, which is about how I did what I did, which is a funny book. And then, you know, I was writing, this is an interesting story, and then we have to, Geraldo and I have to go because we are in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we have a meeting.
At least one of us is.
But this is a good story to end with. Okay, so I'm writing a sequel to Bold Fresh Piece of Humanity, Bold Fresh 2, The Factor Years. And I had gotten a tremendous amount of money in advance to write the book because Bold Fresh was a real big seller. And I'm sitting there at the computer and I'm going, you know what? I'm repeating myself. I'm repeating myself. So I stopped writing, and about a week later, at 4 in the morning, I wake up. And I do that a lot, at about 4, 3 in the morning. I don't know why, I just wake up. And in my mind is Abraham Lincoln. True. Now, I'm not a big Lincoln guy, obsessed with Abe Lincoln. I think he's the best president, but I'm not, you know, dwelling on him. So whenever I get a thought in my life that is unexpected, I do not dismiss that thought. I take it very seriously. So I said, gee, Abraham Lincoln, why is he in my mind? And then I went back to sleep, all right? A couple of days later, I'm still rattling around with Abraham Lincoln, and I'm going, you know, you're a former history teacher, and you like history, and all the history books are boring. They're all boring, all right, for the folks. Why don't you write a book on Abraham Lincoln and make it exciting? So I brought it to the publisher, and I said, instead of Bold Fresh 2, I want to write a book about Abe Lincoln and who killed him and why they did it. He's such a good guy. And they go, you know how many books on Lincoln there are? And I said, yeah, but not written by me. Very humble, very humble. And you know what the publisher said? We don't want it. We don't want it. True story. And I said, okay. I wasn't mad. So I went to another publisher who I had worked with. I had to give the money back for Bold Fresh 2, which was painful. And I said, look, I want to write about it again. He goes, you know how many books are on Lincoln? Same thing. And I said, listen, I'll take back-end money. Back-end money means you don't get a lot up front. But if it sells, then you get a lot coming back to you. And they said, okay. And then I wrote Killing Lincoln. That was the worst decision that publisher has ever made, because I'll be getting money from Killing Lincoln until I die, all right? Now, I get this guy, Martin Dugard, who's the best researcher in the world. He's like a little gnome. He loves this stuff, you know? And he gives me this great research, and I write it as a thriller, because I want everybody to read it, not just people who like history. It's exciting, all right? That's my thing. So I did it. Boom. And then I do Kennedy. Boom. Jesus. Boom. And now Patton. And Patton, I think, is the most exciting of all of them. That comes out in September. So that's how it happened. And the moral of the story is, when you get an unexpected thought, when something pops into your mind, is a reason. Thank you for coming out, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you all. That was good. That was fun. Thanks a lot.